is Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. A talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com, for more info. Email me through benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcasts. People of Distinction is internationally syndicated solely due to the love and support that you all continue to give. We're available across all major distributors, and as long as you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in, because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Paul Hilderman. Now we're going to be discussing an incredible book, okay? Now, the book was initially written by the late Robert L. Ritchie. It was compiled by Paul's late wife, Sandy, and now Paul is bringing it to our network. The book is entitled Into the Flames. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, cityofbooks.com, but if you want to gather everything, man, listen to me. You got to check out the personal site. Intotheflames.com is a one-stop shop for it all. More information on Paul, Sandy, Robert, more information on the book, hyperlink set up to take you to the purchasing page. I'm telling you, man, listen. You want to gather it? It's intotheflames.com. That's where you want to go. Type it into a search bar and be greeted with all of it. And once we start talking, I'm telling you, man, this book is much more than just a catchy title. Before I go any further, I want to quickly point out the fact that Paul was brought to us by City of Books. So for my writers listening in, if you need some assistance moving that masterpiece you just developed, head on over to cityofbooks.com and gather all of the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Paul here on the line. People, listen, what happens when a routine call ends up turning into the fight for your life? Whew, man, what a question. It's something that is not a play on hyperbole, okay? In the book, Into the Flames, we follow Bob Ritchie, who happened to face an inferno, okay? And not only that inferno, it tested his training, it tested his faith, and his will to survive, okay? And today we are diving deep into the story behind that blaze. I'm telling you, this is just a roller coaster of a ride. And I was telling Paul on the pre-screening call, man, when we were doing research in preparation for today's interview, I kept thinking about how amazing of a story this was, how easily it would translate to a Hollywood film or a television series. Listen, pick up the book first, embark upon that journey, but don't be surprised if you happen to see it on the screen near you very soon, okay? Buckle up, because this conversation is about courage. It's about survival. It's about the raw power of the human spirit when everything is burning down. All right, let's get into it. Paul, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
Very good, Benji, and thank you for the opportunity to do this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Listen, man, thank you for the opportunity of showcasing it through our network, man. It is a mutually beneficial thing. I promise you that much. This book is compelling. Yeah, as I mentioned, the title is engaging. It's intriguing. But once you start to go into the words on the pages, my goodness, it is a heart-racing journey that our listening audience members aren't going to be able to put down. So let's jump right in. First and foremost, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background.
A little bit about my background. I've got 30 plus years in as a cook and a chef. I've got 30 plus years in the healthcare business as an EMT and a home health care aide, and also a healthcare maintenance facility manager. I've also got 4 years in as a radio broadcaster. My first job was on an AM radio station in Billings, Montana. And I also worked at an FM station in a small town in Wyoming. Plus, I also had 2+ years in as a wildlands firefighter, working alongside of Bob.
Love it. So what I'm picking up, man, listen, a very impressive and eclectic background. I will say, I was going to mention to you before, man, your voice is pretty great. So I was thinking, I was like, man, listen, you got a career in broadcasting, brother. And now I hear it. You've actually had that career. Okay. You've experienced it. I love it. The next question I have to ask, Paul, I'm curious to know how this book came to fruition, because out of all the backgrounds, writing wasn't one of them. But I understand that you had your hand in this book's creation as well. So talk to me about your influence on this book and really how it came to fruition.
Back in 2019, Sandy and I found out that Bob had passed away. He was living in a small town called Harleton here in Montana. When we went over several months later to go through his house and clean out his house, we found some yellow pieces of legal paper with notes on it and page numbers and description, and we started gathering all these pieces of paper together. Later on, months later, Sandy sat down and started reading this, and come to find out that it was basically the manuscript. Years ago, 20, 30 years ago, we knew that Bob was looking at putting together a book, but we didn't know that anything had taken place until we were cleaning out his house and found these notes. With my involvement of being a wildlands firefighter, I was able to help Sandy while she was writing down the notes, because her penmanship's a heck of a lot better than mine. I was able to help her in the descriptions as far as what is what, the different tools of the trade, how things react, especially when you're doing the communications on the radio. There's always a lag time with the radio communications, which is really hard and makes things harder. But it was fun to do. And Sandy and I always wish that Bob could have been around and see this come into a book form instead of just yellow pieces of paper.
That brings up a great point, and just a notion to point out, man. I love, there's something beautiful about the understanding that, listen, not everybody gets to have their story put in the history books. But what I love about it is that doesn't mean that their story isn't worth being told. And aside from the fact that this is just a remarkable story, there's also something beautiful about this, about the wherewithal that you and Sandy had to make sure that Bob's story was told. And in this particular instance, it was something that was disseminated to the public because, my goodness, what an amazing story it is. Again, the notion is beautiful. The story is incredible. And without further ado, let's jump into it, man. Into the Flames. Tell us more about it.
There's a lot of things, if you start reading the book, where it talks about his previous life, his previous adventures in the Forest Service. It talks about Man Gulch. Man Gulch, a fire that took place back in August of 1949, where there was 13 firefighters that lost their lives because they were trying to run the fire.
Wow.
Before I forget, Man Gulch is a location north of Helena, Montana, which is Helena is the capital. These firefighters tried to run uphill ahead of the fire, lost their lives. Certain things took place in the policies and procedures in the Forest Service throughout the years as far as safety. This is how we're going to look after your safety. And that's something that Bob instilled in his crew. He instilled that and pushed that into me when him and I, as soon as we got out of our vehicles to either walk around on a fire or use a hose or whatever, he would always push the fact, do you have your equipment on? Please make sure you have your equipment on. Getting into the book, it talks about the events leading up to what he went through, the fire that he was assisting upon, and the perils of what his brain had to have been going through.
Yeah.
Fight or flight, especially fight or flight. And in that case, it's smoky out. Trees are burning. Trees are falling. Grasses are burning. Everything around you is hot, including the air. That's the hardest part to put up with. When I was fighting fire in Northern California in 1994, we didn't see the sun for a week. When you've got 250-foot trees that are burning and you're hearing crack, crack, and you don't know if that tree or a tree's coming down or whatever, it's a realization in your mind, you have got to look around. And at the time I was a squad boss and I had the care of 5 other guys with me that I had to keep track of. When you're mostly looking at the ground to take care of fires and you're busy doing things where your peripheral vision gets lost, sometimes you lose your sense of direction on where you are, especially when you can't see visible markers such as hillsides or whatever. And I think Bob ran into that same thing, but he knew during this fire where he was because he had gone hunting in this area before. He was an avid elk and deer hunter. He got that from his parents. He had fun working as a firefighter, but it was still serious.
People, again, we're here on the line with Paul Hilderman. Now, we're discussing a book that was originally written by Robert L. Ritchie and compiled by Paul's wife, Sandy. The book is entitled Into the Flames. Remember, man, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, intotheflames.com, cityofbooks.com. It's just, listen, research it, and you're going to find so many places where it's available. But I'm always going to push towards the website, man, because it really is the one-stop shop for it all. Intotheflames.com is where you got to go. Pick up your copies today and trust and believe we've barely scratched the surface. There's so much to be found about the narrative itself that I'm purposely avoiding because I want that to be where you go next. Because this is something that is going to keep you at the edge of your seat. And something that I want to go to next here, Paul. And I know Bob's faith played a part in all of this. And I want to quickly touch up on that now because I think it's fair to assume that anybody placed in such a harrowing position, such a devastating position, it's going to, like you mentioned, the fight or flight, it's going to have you really looking internally and trying to piece things together, trying to gain your perspective. I want to now go to Bob's faith and what that played not only in his journey on that day, battling the fire, but also in his life. And I know that it's something found within the book as well that readers are going to be able to pull from. But talk to us a little bit more about that.
Bob's parents were incredible. Bob's and Sandy's dad was a Methodist minister for roughly 50 years. He did many things in the churches, did a lot of things for the people around him. Bob and Sandy were raised in a very trusting and loving home. As they called themselves, they were PKs, preacher's kids. That doesn't mean that they were angels in any way, shape, or form, because I know several stories that they've told me over the years, and they had a fun life. Their parents instilled a lot of good things into their heart and their soul.
Yeah.
Believe in yourself, believe in God, believe in prayer, believe that God is going to answer your prayer. There's multiple Bible verses that I could quote, but that would be almost a sermon. There's always a way out of a situation. God will show you how to get out of the situation. He will open that door for you. But just believe the fact that you can make it through certain instances in your life, and you will thank yourself later for trying to do something that way.
Paul, I'm curious, man. I understand this is obviously Bob's story. We got that. But of course, it was compiled by your wife. And you, Paul, and Sandy had a close relationship, right? There was clearly this dynamic between the three of you. So I want to take a quick opportunity here, man, and talk to our listening audience about the connection that the three of you established and really how the three of you came together to almost be a family amongst yourselves.
Okay. Bob became an EMT several years before Sandy and I did. We found out what it was like, how he was interacting as far as being on the ambulance or answering emergency calls by pickup, because there was a lot of ranches around. Sandy later became EMT while we were still living in Billings, Montana, through the fire station that she was working at. She loved it so much and enjoyed the training and the ride-alongs and things of that nature. And then several years later, by the way, since I was working at this hospital in Harlowton, I went ahead and got into my EMT training, took the test. We all got our EMT basics and did the ride-alongs in the ambulances, did emergency calls. We did the rodeos, because you always have to have EMTs at rodeos. We all had a good time with it.
Yeah.
Our youngest daughter, Laura, also became one of the patients on the state EMT staff. When we went around the state to do the testing for the new EMTs, she was a patient at that time. My mom was a nurse RN for almost 50 years. So it came naturally. It came by blood. It was fun. We had a good time doing this.
Paul, listen, man, I'm curious to know, as we begin closing out, if Bob were here right now, how do you think he'd want his story being used? For training, for awareness, or for maybe even something more personal?
Benji, I would have to say it's both. I can't rule out one without the other.
Yeah.
Once you read the book and you see what took place, it is a training situation. It is a training and a reminder of your training in your life, because of the different things that Bob was trained in with the Forest Service. It is also a life lesson, and also Bob would have loved to have seen this probably go in several different directions, possibly into the movie genre, with your movie up there and lights on a marquee. He didn't do a lot of the media things that we do as such as of today. He was more of the hands-on type of person, being a mechanic, being a working for the Forest Service. He helped people out. I think that's the training that his parents put in there, helping people out. If you see somebody alongside the road that's got a flat tire, pull over and find out if they need an extra hand. Pay it forward.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the best. Pay it forward.
And what a great message to lean into, man, and to close out of, because people, listen, we talk about it constantly here through People of Distinction, and it could be viewed as a bit of a cliche, but we mean it wholeheartedly, man. Like, when it comes to our quote unquote human family, there's a lot of division right now. There's a lot of separation amongst us here in the States, but amongst us in the world right now. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of one thing or another and what keeps us divided. It's not pertinent to today's interview, but the main thing here is just imagine that notion of paying it forward, of being more empathetic to those around us, and what the world could look like if we actually did that. It's a beautiful thing. And it's something, like, I'm an optimist, so I believe we could get there, but it's something that I recognize is in short supply. And this book is a phenomenal reminder of that. Yeah, on the surface level, we're talking about this fire that was blazing around, but when you read it between the lines, Bob Ritchie's story isn't just about the flames, right? It isn't just about one firefighter's courage. It is about that, but it's deeper, right? It's about the unbreakable bond between brothers and sisters and these firefighters and this team of individuals who run toward the blaze when everyone else is fleeing from it. And what that bond means is something profound. Listen, I encourage you all, again, pick up the book. It's called Into the Flames, intotheflames.com. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's a lot of other places. Remember, we're here on the line speaking with the impressive Paul Hilderman, but the book was written initially by Robert L. Ritchie. That's the name you're going to want to search for. And also remember that it was also compiled by Paul's wife, Sandy Hilderman. But once you start to research it, you're going to find a number of places that have it. And I promise you, this is one you're not going to be able to put down. Paul, listen, man, I want to thank you for honoring your friend's legacy in such a beautiful and raw depiction, but also giving us a window into what that brotherhood truly looked like, what it meant. Thank you once again for writing it, but more so for being here with us to discuss it all. You're people of distinction.
Thank you, Benji.